My name is Daniel Fiverson. Welcome to the Astrological Weather Report for the April lunar cycle. The planets will occupy the eastern horizon of the natural zodiac throughout this lunar cycle. 7 celestial bodies spin through Aries like a centrifuge that continues our inner world focus. The emphasis is on how we instinctively express our individuality, our relationship to ourselves, our relationship to what we deem to be most important to our survival and well-being. The Aries new moon occurs on April 11th at 10:31 p.m. Eastern Time. The full moon in Scorpio occurs on April 26th at 11:31 a.m. Eastern Time. p.m. Eastern Time. Sorry for that typo. The sun reignites as it transits through Aries. The planetary centrifuge then spins on into Taurus as the sun reconnects with his planetary congregation. Early in the month, evolutionary dynamos Eris and Pluto, still anchored in Aries, visceral energies combine to shake the rafters. As the sun and personal planets, Mercury and Venus, move through Aries, our attention will begin to be drawn to what matters for our own, hopefully enlightened self-interest. With the sun's entry into Taurus, the inner focus will shift to our tangible and intangible assets. All 3 inner planets, Mercury, Venus, and Mars, will meet up with Uranus, as will the sun and the moon. The Aquarian energy that has been anchored by Jupiter and Saturn is disseminated. Sporadic eruptions occur in our personal narratives with ourselves and in conversations with others, in our behavior and in our relationships. Venus settles into her own self-reflective sign of Taurus. Issues regarding individuality, sacred commitments to self, self-empowerment, and self-responsibility complete the agenda. Mercury transits through the last decan of Aries and into Virgo. The messenger god discourses with all of the superior planets from Ceres through Eris. Penetrating personal narratives reflect and expose our self-esteem, our self-awareness, and our self-centeredness. Mercury will pass apogee, his greatest elongation, as he hides behind the sun, preparing to rise as the morning star. Mercury's entry into earthbound Taurus grounds our dialogues in self-oriented soliloquies. Later, the god of eloquence breathes the familiar air of his native Gemini and conjoins the lunar north node which he rules. Mars confronts our fidelity to our thoughts and beliefs. Midway through the month, the fire god slips into lunar waters. We will hear the sizzle, or perhaps a sigh of relief. Pluto, Hades, makes his annual station retrograde at the full moon. The challenged places of the world and in our lives are spotlighted as potential targets for transformational cataclysm. Ceres, Demeter, confronts Pluto. Chthonic memories are exhumed in need of reconciliation. Juno stations retrograde and finds opportunities with Ceres for actualizing our commitments to faithfulness to our personal truths. Ceres makes her annual meetup with Eris, who courts chaos and disaster, as well as exceptional creativity and life-changing alterations. The Divine Mother meanders the lush fields of Taurus. Our attention is redirected to what we require for self-care and nurturing. The month ends as sacred Vesta turns her gaze backward, triggering our discernment regarding our self-worth, how we are learning to manage our personal resources, and our authenticity as we meet the future. So these are the charts that we're going to look at today. I don't work with most of the inner planet transits because they really touch too many signs. It's just too much information for one report. But I will report on the rest of the Mercury, Venus, and Mars aspects in daily through the month. So we have the Aries new moon on the 11th, and the full moon on the 26th. We also have Mars ingress in Cancer, Mercury ingress Taurus, and Venus ingress in Taurus as well this month. There are 2 squares, Venus and Pluto in Ceres, and a conjunct of Venus conjunct Uranus. Oh, did I say the trine? No, we also have a trine from Mars to Jupiter. And these are all the aspect points and the dates of those meetups. The sun has come out from being orphaned this month. The last 2 months, he's been relatively isolated in the chart with not too many, if any, aspects to the major planets. But he's quite more active this month. He's going to trine Juno and Vesta. He will conjoin Eris and also conjoin Uranus and Mercury, and then will ingress into Taurus and square Saturn. And I want to thank Bradley Aragon for the development of these beautiful glyphs that I've been able to use. And this is his website where you can reach him. So the Aries new moon is on the 11th. The sun and moon form a partile new phase conjunction in Aries. And at the lunation, the sun and moon separate from a conjunction to Mercury, a conjunction to Venus, a square to Jupiter, a trine to Juno, a square to Pluto, a conjunction to Ceres, a conjunction to Eris, and Mars is in mutual reception to Mercury. As the primary masculine/day and feminine/night frequencies unite as the vibrational fulcrum, our instincts are heightened and emotionally engaged. Impulsive words and desires vie for attention. We seek the recovery of what we perceive as lost. We can feel threatened by crises and challenges to normalcy, but we emerge with a new commitment to our personal truth. On the 11th, Venus will form a partile first quarter square to Pluto in Capricorn. The sun and moon will apply to a conjunction to Venus, and Venus will trine Juno, conjoin Ceres, it will square Hygeia, and it will conjoin Eris. How are we to resolve, Venus and Pluto establish a core tension that the goddess of relationship will embody as she transits Taurus? Where is the balance of power in our relationships? Are we committed to what is only best for our needs, or are we invested in the welfare of others and of our community? How do we resolve these power conflicts between self-interest and what serves the common good? Are we seeking to recover something whose time has passed? And are our personal directives complicit with old patterns of behavior regarding our health? On April 12th, asteroid Juno stations retrograde. The moon trines Juno, the sun trines Juno as well, Venus trines Juno, and Mars opposes Juno. Juno herself will square Neptune, will trine Ceres, will form an inconjunct to Sedna, and will trine Eris in Aries. The commitment and fidelity of our relationships comes under review. What are the personal values and truths to which we are committed and instinctively working to actualize? How do our choices reflect that commitment? Are we truly committed to nurturing what we need at our deepest level? And how conscious are we of our primary needs? On April 13th, the sun forms a partile new phase conjunction with dwarf planet Eris. The sun will conjoin Mercury, it will conjoin Venus, it will square Pluto, trine Juno, conjoin Ceres, and also square Hygeia. An annual cycle begins between the source of our life force and the celestial irritant that creates pearls from sand. An uncontrollable undercurrent pervades our self-expression, driven by erratic impulses. Instinctive desires surface. Conflicts surround individual expression versus consensus conformity. Rashness, internal crises, youthfulness, ruthlessness, capriciousness, revenge, sorrow, ill health all complete the litany of celestial expression under this conjunction and for the entire cycle. On April 13th, asteroid Pallas Athena squares the lunar nodes. Pallas forms a partile first quarter square to the lunar south node and a last quarter square to the lunar north node. And Vesta separates from a gibbous opposition to Pallas Athena. A planet squaring the lunar nodes is a planetary condition in evolutionary astrology that implies that an issue from the past correlating to the archetype of the planet involved was skipped over for any number of reasons and remains unresolved. It comes up for attention now and must be addressed. The efficacy of the strategic goals of our lives comes under scrutiny. New paradigms are on the drawing board. Old truths are confronted by present realities and future considerations. Excuse me. On April 14th, Venus will enter her own sign of Taurus. She separates from a conjunction to the sun and applies to a conjunction, or Mercury applies to a conjunction to Venus. And Venus will conjoin Uranus, Pluto, square Pluto, trine Vesta, trine Juno, conjoin Ceres, square Hygeia, and conjoin dwarf planet Eris. The goddess of relationship enters her own sign of self-love, self-esteem, and self-worth. We are magnetized to what is essential: garden maintenance, possessiveness in intimate relationships, needing to be nurtured more, overeating, initiating necessary conversations with others, being held accountable for our own words and actions, relationship power struggles, personal authenticity, and healthcare priorities are all highlighted this month. On April 19th, the sun enters Taurus. The moon in Cancer squares the sun. Mercury conjoins the sun. The sun squares Pluto. The sun trines Vesta. The sun trines Juno. The sun conjoins Eris, squares Hygeia, and conjoins Eris. We seek renewal in our lives. Our core survival is brought into focus, potentially threatened, and our essential needs are actualized. Restlessness emerges. We engage in short trips and long conversations. Crises threatens our vitality. We are encouraged to renew our commitment to nurture ourselves. On April 20th, asteroid Vesta will station direct. The sun trines Vesta, Mercury trines Vesta, Venus trines Vesta, Jupiter opposes Vesta, Uranus squares Vesta, Vesta opposes Pallas Athena, squares the lunar south node, squares the lunar north node, and Black Moon Lilith squares Vesta as well. Our authenticity and commitment to ourselves and what we consider to be sacred trust is awakened. Previous introspection has incited inner narratives that can make us aware of the smudges and specks in our personalities requiring attention. Our mannerisms expose or express our personal authenticity. New versions of sacrosanct selfhood emerge as collective light and shadow. On April 23rd, Mars will enter Cancer. Mars separates from a trine to Jupiter, separates from a square to Neptune, and separates from an opposition to Juno. Mars finds himself out of his natural element. The god of fire must now learn how to swim through muddy and turbulent waters. Crises emerge regarding commitment and emotional truthfulness. Behavior and choices are driven by emotional impulses. On April 23rd, Ceres forms a new phase conjunction with Eris. The sun conjoins Ceres, and Ceres applies to a square to Pluto and separates from a trine to Juno. Deep personal emotional wounds.
Sorry, I didn't catch that. You can also try spelling it.
Oh, sorry about that. It's my spell checker working overtime. Deep personal emotional wounds can be exposed. What do we feel we have personally lost? What can we learn as a result of the chaos and discomfort? What have we learned as a result of the crises we have experienced? On April 28th, the sun and the moon form a partile full phase opposition in Scorpio. At the conjunction of the moon, sun and moon, the two major configurations are formed. There's a fixed grand cross between the moon, the sun, which is conjunct Uranus, Venus, Lilith, and Mercury, and Hygeia, and a mixed element water-air grand trine of the moon, Mars, and Jupiter. Mercury, Venus, and Uranus and Taurus apply to a full phase opposition to the moon. Jupiter trines the moon squares Uranus, squares Pallas Athena, squares Hygeia, and opposes Black Moon Lilith. This fundamental opposition of the full moon magnetizes our narratives in a reflection of powerful emotional disruptions. Critical healthcare issues remain on the table, demanding proactive resolution. Safety and security are threatened from multiple directions. The sense of who we are as individuals and as a collective is in powerful flux that is illuminating authentic necessities for our survival. On April 27th, Pluto stations retrograde. Mercury trines Pluto, Ceres squares Pluto, Hygeia opposes Pluto, and Pluto squares dwarf planet Eris. And this last one is the aspect that I have been talking about now for 2 years, something that has not happened in 2,600 years. It refers back to the axial age, and I refer you back to some previous talks about how the great thought streams of Western civilization came onto the planet during this particular square of Pluto and Capricorn to Eris and Aries. There are 2 more perfections this year. As evolutionary pressures turn inward, a review of the forms and structures that were created and destroyed over the last 6 months begins. What collateral damages have we suffered that we need to heal? What have we put in place to make us stronger and healthier? What have we learned from recent history? On May 5th, Neptune forms a partile last quarter square to asteroid Juno retrograde, now retrograde. Asteroid Juno, now retrograde. Pallas will conjoin Neptune over this in this period. The goddess of wisdom approaches the God of ultimate truth and unconditional love. What is the level of our commitment to our acceptance and surrender to others for who they are and to be okay with ourselves as well? How can we find that affirmative perspective and forgiveness for ourselves and others? What can we actively do mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically to accomplish these intentions and perhaps interventions? On May 8th, dwarf planet Ceres enters Taurus. Ceres forms a square to Pluto, separates from a trine to Ceres, applies to a trine to Ceres, Juno applies to a trine to Ceres, and Ceres separates from a conjunction to Eris. The goddess of the Eleusinian mysteries enters the fecund world of earthly resources. Transformative potentials awaken. The trauma we are carrying forward, seeking healing through grounding and adopting an attitude of sacred commitment to ourselves. On May 8th, Venus enters Gemini. Mercury separates from a new phase conjunction to Venus. Venus squares Jupiter, trines Pluto, and squares Vesta. All relationships are served by good communication. We need to keep our egos in check. We need to keep the balance of power in relationships on an equal footing. And we need to find our authenticity in relationships with others and allow others the same space. So the takeaway, this lunar month presents us with the promise of renewal. Renewal of our connection to what is essential, renewal of our commitment to what we authentically believe. We become what we believe. What we believe is driven by what we think, arising directly from our emotional experiences of the past. We cannot drag the past into the present and make it the future. Truth and lies are the mortal and immortal twins of the Gemini-Sagittarius lunar nodes. The season-long transit of Neptune over the lunar nodes has played out as a deeply polarized ideological and political conflict. The truth or falsehood and authenticity of what we think, what we know, and what we believe has been brought to our attention with direct emotional impact. Aquarius correlates to the energetic matrix that sets in motion the psychic seismic events that shatters the crystallized structure and form of who we have become. The biting winds of Aquarius will not subside anytime soon. This lunar cycle will, however, scrub off some of the stresses of the past and awaken us to what we need to be doing in order to go forward. What we need to thrive and survive must match what we think and believe. What we say and do must match what we value. We can be magnetized to whatever we desire in the moment without any thought given to the consequences. Verbal and written expression comes from a place that is instinctual, driven by ideas and personal beliefs to which we are committed. It also comes from a place that luxuriates in beauty, love, and diversity. Narratives may echo the past, but must be anchored in visions and imaginings of the future. The need for authenticity is paramount as we continue our search to understand the whats, the wheres, and the hows of our recent loss of normalcy and descent into the personal underworld. Like Hermes, our cognitive intelligence can enter our shadow and return unharmed. Enlightened self-awareness is the reward for self-diligence. False truths and inconsistent beliefs dissolve in the alchemy of conscious awareness. Productive narratives circulate. People and circumstances show up to heal our wounds. Some days might feel like an abyss. Things expand and then contract. Stay focused on your goals. Keep paddling. We begin by committing to make life an adventure. Free copies of this forecast are available in PDF format to use as a daily reference. And just please email me for a copy at daniel@4evolutionaryastrology.com, and I'll be happy to send one out to you. Recently, I have compiled a series of essays that I have written that combine astrology, mythology, and astronomy to provide a wider perspective on some of the major principles of evolutionary astrology. The chapters in this book are What is Evolutionary Astrology? From Eternal Child to Sage, the Astrology, Mythology, and Astronomy of Mercury, the Discovery of the Outer Planets and Asteroids, the Water Triad, the Evolution of Consciousness, Eris, the Astrology, Astronomy, and Mythology, and the True Chart of the United States. And this is available on Amazon in ebook or paperback. My consultations answer the questions, who am I? Why am I here? What are my lessons? I produce astrological weather reports on a monthly and daily basis, both on my website, the number 4evolutionaryastrology.com, and on Facebook, facebook.com/evolutionary astrology. And you can reach me at daniel@the number 4evolutionaryastrology.com, or be happy to give me a call. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be safe, be well, be kind. Namaste.